Hello, my friends. Welcome once again to Timeless English. It's wonderful to have you here. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a peaceful day. Now, find a comfortable place to sit. Take a slow breath. Let your mind grow quiet. And let's step back in time together. Before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through inspiring stories from history, please consider subscribing to Timeless English. There are many more journeys waiting for you here. And now, close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. The year is 1460. The sun rises over the green hills of Italy. Birds glide silently across the morning sky. A gentle breeze moves through the trees. Nearby, a young boy sits beneath an olive tree. In his hands is a notebook. He watches the world around him with great attention. The flight of a bird. The shape of a leaf. The movement of water in a stream. While others see ordinary things, this boy sees mysteries. Questions fill his mind. Why do birds fly? How does the human body work? Can a machine imitate nature? Can people one day soar through the sky? Most people would never ask such questions. But this boy is different. Very different. One day, he will paint some of the most famous works of art ever created. He will design machines centuries ahead of his time. He will study science, engineering, anatomy, architecture, and nature. Many people will call him the greatest genius who ever lived. But how did a boy from a small village become one of history's most extraordinary minds? And what can we learn from his endless curiosity? Stay with me. Because today, we are going to discover the remarkable story of Leonardo da Vinci. And it begins in a quiet village surrounded by hills and vineyards. A place called Vinci. Leonardo was born on April 15, 1452. His birthplace was the small village of Vinci, located in the beautiful countryside of Tuscany, Italy. At the time, nobody could have imagined the impact this child would one day have on the world. Leonardo was born outside of marriage. His father was a respected notary named Ser Piero. His mother was a young woman from the countryside. Because of his unusual family situation, Leonardo's childhood was different from that of many other children. Yet this difference may have helped shape the person he became. Unlike many boys who followed strict academic paths, Leonardo spent much of his youth exploring the natural world. And nature became his first teacher. The hills became his classroom. The forests became his laboratory. The rivers became his books. From a very young age, Leonardo showed an extraordinary curiosity. He wanted to understand everything. Nothing seemed too small to deserve his attention. He watched birds soaring through the sky. He examined insects crawling through the grass. He observed how sunlight reflected on water. He studied the shapes of clouds. He paid attention to details that most people ignored. Many children ask questions. Leonardo never seemed to stop asking them. Why do birds flap their wings? Why does water flow in curves? Why do trees grow in different shapes? How do muscles move? How does the human eye see? The more he learned, the more questions appeared. His curiosity seemed endless. And unlike many people, Leonardo was not satisfied with simple answers. He wanted to see things for himself. He wanted to observe. To test. To understand. Years later, this habit would help him become one of the greatest thinkers in history. But for now, he was simply a boy with a notebook and an endless sense of wonder. As Leonardo grew older, his artistic talent also began to attract attention. His drawings were unusually detailed. His observations were unusually accurate. People started noticing that this curious young boy possessed a remarkable gift. A gift that might take him far beyond the hills of Vinci. Soon, an opportunity would arrive. An opportunity that would change the course of his life forever. Because in the magnificent city of Florence, one of the greatest artists in Italy was looking for apprentices. And young Leonardo was about to walk through the doors of a workshop unlike anything he had ever seen. What would he discover there? And how would a curious village boy begin his journey toward becoming one of the greatest minds in human history? Let's find out. The city of Florence was very different from the quiet village of Vinci. Its streets were busy. Merchants sold goods from distant lands. Artists worked on magnificent paintings. Builders constructed beautiful churches and palaces. New ideas seemed to flow through the city like a river. In the 15th century, Florence was one of the most important cities in Europe. It was the heart of the Renaissance. A time when people became deeply interested in art, science, learning, and discovery. For a young man with an endless curiosity about the world, there could hardly have been a better place to be. As Leonardo entered his teenage years, his father began to notice his remarkable talent. The boy's drawings were extraordinary. His sketches of plants, animals, and people showed a level of detail that surprised those who saw them. Leonardo did not simply draw what things looked like. He tried to understand how they worked. Recognizing his talent, Leonardo's father made an important decision. He arranged for his son to become an apprentice in the workshop of a famous artist named Andrea del Verrocchio. For Leonardo, this opportunity would change everything. Verrocchio was one of the most respected artists in Florence. His workshop was much more than a place where paintings were made. It was a center of creativity. A place where artists, sculptors, engineers, and craftsmen worked side by side. Young apprentices learned many different skills. They mixed paints. Prepared canvases. Studied drawing. Worked with clay. Learned sculpture. And observed experienced masters at work. Every day brought new challenges. Every day brought new lessons. For Leonardo, it was the perfect environment. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge. He studied everything he could. Painting. Mathematics. Geometry. Mechanics. Architecture. Nothing escaped his attention. While many apprentices focused only on becoming artists, Leonardo's curiosity reached far beyond the walls of the workshop. He wanted to understand the world itself. And the more he learned, the more fascinated he became. Soon, his talent began to stand out. Teachers noticed it. Fellow apprentices noticed it. Even Verrocchio himself noticed it. According to a famous story, Verrocchio once asked Leonardo to paint part of an angel in a larger work. When the painting was finished, Leonardo's angel was said to be so beautiful that it surpassed the work of his master. Whether the story is completely true or not, one thing is certain. Leonardo's extraordinary talent was becoming impossible to ignore. His reputation slowly began to grow. People started to recognize that this young apprentice possessed a rare gift. But painting was only one part of Leonardo's story. While others saw art as a profession, Leonardo saw it as a doorway. A doorway to understanding nature. The human body. Movement. Light. Machines. And the mysteries of the universe itself. The workshop had opened his eyes to endless possibilities. Yet one question continued to capture his imagination more than almost any other. A question inspired by the birds he had watched as a child. A question that seemed impossible. Could human beings ever fly? At the time, most people would have laughed at such an idea. But Leonardo was not interested in what seemed possible. He was interested in what might become possible. And that simple question was about to lead him down a path unlike anything the world had ever seen. What he would imagine next would place him centuries ahead of his time. And it is there that our story continues. As Leonardo grew older, his reputation as an artist continued to spread. People admired his drawings. They admired his skill. They admired his imagination. But Leonardo was never satisfied with simply being a painter. His curiosity was far too powerful. While many artists focused only on creating beautiful images, Leonardo wanted to understand the hidden rules behind everything he saw. He wanted to know why things worked the way they did. Why water flowed. Why clouds moved. Why muscles pulled on bones. Why birds could fly. To Leonardo, every question was connected. Every mystery deserved investigation. And so he began carrying notebooks wherever he went. If an idea entered his mind, he wrote it down. If he saw something interesting, he sketched it. If he had a question, he recorded it. Over the years, these notebooks filled with thousands of observations. Some pages contained beautiful drawings. Others contained scientific studies. Some were filled with ideas for machines that had never existed before. His notebooks became a window into one of the most remarkable minds in history. Leonardo observed everything. He studied rivers and waterfalls. He watched how water moved around rocks. He examined plants and trees. He observed the flight of birds. He studied shadows and light. Nothing was too ordinary to deserve his attention. Many people looked at the world. Leonardo truly saw it. One day, he might spend hours studying a flower. The next day, he might examine a machine. The day after that, he might sketch the muscles of a horse. His interests seemed limitless. And unlike most people, Leonardo was not afraid to ask difficult questions. Questions that had no obvious answers. Questions that challenged accepted beliefs. Questions that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. This made him different. Very different. In many ways, Leonardo thought like a modern scientist centuries before modern science existed. He believed observation was important. He believed evidence mattered. He believed people should study the world for themselves. These ideas may seem normal today. But in Leonardo's time, they were revolutionary. The more he learned, the more ambitious his ideas became. Soon, he was designing bridges, mechanical devices, weapons, buildings, and machines unlike anything the world had ever seen. Some of these inventions looked impossible. Some seemed strange. And some would not become reality until hundreds of years later. Yet among all the questions that filled Leonardo's notebooks, one continued to return again and again. The dream that had fascinated him since childhood. The dream inspired by birds. The dream of flight. For centuries, human beings had watched birds soar through the sky. They had imagined what it might feel like to leave the ground, to rise above the world, to fly. Most people accepted that such a dream would never come true. But Leonardo was not most people. He believed nature held the answers. And if he studied birds carefully enough, perhaps he could unlock one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Could human beings one day fly through the sky? The answer would lead Leonardo to create some of the most astonishing designs of his life. Designs so advanced that people today still marvel at them. And that is where our story continues. Leonardo had spent years observing birds. Now he was ready to turn observation into imagination. What he created next would make him one of history's greatest visionaries. And it would prove that his mind was centuries ahead of its time. For as long as Leonardo could remember, birds had fascinated him. As a child, he had watched them soaring above the hills of Vinci. Now, as an adult, he studied them with even greater attention. He observed the movement of their wings, the shape of their feathers, the way they caught the wind, the way they turned in the air. While most people simply admired birds, Leonardo treated them like teachers. He believed nature was the greatest inventor of all. And if humans wanted to fly, they first needed to understand how nature had solved the problem. So he watched. And he sketched. And he asked questions. Many questions. What gives a bird lift? How does it stay balanced? How does it change direction? Could a machine do the same thing? These questions filled page after page of his notebooks. Soon, Leonardo began drawing ideas for flying machines. Some resembled giant birds. Others looked like enormous mechanical wings. One design featured a machine that a person could operate by moving pedals and levers. Another resembled a large rotating device, similar in some ways to a modern helicopter. To people living in the 15th century, such ideas seemed almost unbelievable. Most had never imagined that humans might one day leave the ground. Yet Leonardo filled his notebooks with design after design. Some of his ideas would never work. Others were far ahead of the technology available during his lifetime. But that was not the point. Leonardo was exploring possibilities. He was asking questions nobody else dared to ask. He was imagining a future that did not yet exist. And that made him extraordinary. What is perhaps most remarkable is that Leonardo never became discouraged by failure. Many of his inventions were never built. Many remained only sketches. But he continued asking questions. He continued experimenting. He continued learning. For Leonardo, curiosity itself was a reward. He did not need immediate success. He simply wanted to understand. And that mindset allowed him to see opportunities where others saw impossibilities. Today, when we look at his notebooks, we can see ideas that seem surprisingly modern. Flying machines, parachutes, mechanical devices, engineering concepts. Some would not become reality for hundreds of years. Yet Leonardo imagined them long before the world was ready. It is easy to see why people sometimes call him a man ahead of his time. But while Leonardo dreamed about the future, he was also creating masterpieces in the present. His artistic talent continued to grow. His reputation continued to spread. Powerful rulers wanted his services. Important patrons admired his work. And before long, Leonardo would begin creating the paintings that would make his name famous across the world. One of those paintings would become the most famous portrait in human history. A painting so mysterious that people still discuss it more than 500 years later. And that is where our story continues. Leonardo had spent years studying the world around him. Now the world was beginning to notice him. And the masterpiece he would create next would ensure that his name would never be forgotten. By now, Leonardo da Vinci had earned a reputation as one of the most talented artists in Italy. People admired his skill. They admired his creativity. But what truly made Leonardo different was the way he observed the world. He did not simply paint faces. He studied emotions. He did not simply paint light. He studied how light behaved. He did not simply paint people. He tried to understand what made them human. This attention to detail helped him create works unlike anything people had seen before. Leonardo believed that great art should feel alive. And so he spent countless hours studying nature and human expression. He watched how people smiled. How they frowned. How they looked when they were happy, sad, surprised, or thoughtful. Every observation became part of his work. One of his most famous projects was a painting called The Last Supper. It was created for a monastery in Milan. The painting shows a dramatic moment from the life of Jesus Christ. Jesus has just told his followers that one of them will betray him. The reactions are immediate. Shock. Confusion. Disbelief. Fear. Each person responds differently. And Leonardo captured every emotion with remarkable skill. People who saw the painting were amazed. It felt real. It felt human. Even today, more than 500 years later, millions of people continue to admire it. Yet another painting would make Leonardo even more famous. A portrait of a woman. At first glance, it seems simple. A woman sits quietly. Her hands rest calmly before her. She gazes toward the viewer. And she wears a small smile. A very small smile. But that smile has fascinated people for centuries. The painting became known as the Mona Lisa. Today, it is one of the most famous works of art in the world. People travel from every corner of the globe just to see it. But why? Part of the answer lies in Leonardo's genius. The smile appears to change depending on how you look at it. Sometimes it seems joyful. Sometimes mysterious. Sometimes almost secretive. The more people study the painting, the more questions they ask. And Leonardo would probably have enjoyed that. After all, he loved mysteries. He loved questions. And he rarely gave simple answers. What made Leonardo's paintings special was not only their beauty. It was the way they invited people to think. To observe. To wonder. Just as he had spent his life observing the world, he encouraged others to do the same. His paintings became more than works of art. They became conversations between the artist and the viewer. Conversations that continue to this day. Yet despite creating masterpieces that would make him famous forever, Leonardo's curiosity never slowed down. While others celebrated his success, he continued filling notebooks with ideas. Ideas for inventions. Ideas for scientific studies. Ideas for machines that seemed impossible. In fact, some historians believe that Leonardo's greatest masterpiece was not a painting at all. It was something much larger. Something hidden inside thousands of pages of notes and sketches. A collection of ideas that revealed the extraordinary power of his mind. And that is where our story continues. The world remembered Leonardo for his paintings. But Leonardo himself may have been most interested in his questions. And the notebooks he left behind would reveal a mind unlike any other in history. Leonardo da Vinci painted masterpieces. He designed flying machines. He studied nature. But perhaps the most extraordinary thing he left behind was something much simpler. His notebooks. Throughout his life, Leonardo carried notebooks wherever he went. If he saw something interesting, he sketched it. If he had an idea, he wrote it down. If a question entered his mind, he recorded it. Day after day. Year after year. His notebooks continued to grow. Today, thousands of pages survive. And they reveal a mind that never stopped exploring. Open one of Leonardo's notebooks and you might find a sketch of a bird. Turn the page, and you might see a design for a machine. Turn another page, and you could discover studies of muscles, bones, or the human heart. His interests seemed endless. Nothing was too small. Nothing was too complicated. Everything deserved attention. One of Leonardo's greatest passions was understanding the human body. He believed artists should know what lay beneath the skin. How muscles moved. How bones supported the body. How the heart worked. To learn these things, Leonardo conducted detailed anatomical studies. He carefully observed and sketched different parts of the human body. His drawings were astonishingly accurate. In fact, some of his observations would not be fully understood by scientists until centuries later. But Leonardo did not stop there. He studied rivers, clouds, weather, plants, animals, mathematics, engineering, architecture, military technology, and countless other subjects. Sometimes it seems as if he wanted to understand everything in existence. And perhaps he did. What made Leonardo remarkable was not simply his intelligence. Many intelligent people have lived throughout history. What made him special was his endless curiosity. He never stopped asking questions. He never assumed he already knew enough. Even when he became famous. Even when powerful rulers sought his advice. Even when people admired his work, Leonardo remained a student of the world. Always learning. Always observing. Always wondering. His notebooks contain questions that still feel modern today. Why is the sky blue? How do birds stay in the air? How does water shape the land? How does the human body function? These are questions scientists continue to explore. In many ways, Leonardo was not only an artist. He was also a scientist. An engineer. An inventor. A thinker. A dreamer. And perhaps most importantly, a lifelong learner. That is why people often struggle to describe him with a single title. Artist? Yes. Inventor? Certainly. Scientist? In many ways. But none of these words fully capture who Leonardo was. Because Leonardo da Vinci was something much rarer. He was a person who never lost his sense of wonder. And that wonder continued guiding him throughout his life. As the years passed, his fame spread far beyond Italy. Kings admired him. Rulers sought his advice. His reputation crossed borders. And eventually, an invitation would arrive from a powerful king. An invitation that would take Leonardo away from Italy and into the final chapter of his remarkable life. What awaited him there? And how would one of history's greatest minds spend his final years? That is where our story continues. Leonardo had spent a lifetime exploring the world. Now, as he entered his later years, the world was coming to him. By the time Leonardo da Vinci reached his later years, he was famous throughout much of Europe. Artists admired him. Scholars respected him. Powerful rulers sought his advice. His reputation had grown far beyond the hills of Vinci where his journey began. Yet Leonardo remained what he had always been. A curious student of the world. No matter how much he accomplished, he never stopped learning. In the early 1500s, Italy was changing. Wars and political struggles affected many cities. At the same time, Leonardo was growing older. His hands were not as steady as they once had been. His energy was beginning to fade. But his mind remained active. Always questioning. Always exploring. Then an important opportunity arrived. The King of France, Francis I, invited Leonardo to come and live in France. The young king admired Leonardo greatly. He saw him not only as an artist but as one of the greatest thinkers of his age. Leonardo accepted the invitation. And so, after spending most of his life in Italy, he made the journey north to France. There, he settled in a beautiful residence near the royal court. For Leonardo, it was a peaceful place. A place where he could reflect on a lifetime of work. A place where he could continue studying, drawing, and sharing his ideas. King Francis often visited him. The two spent time discussing art, science, engineering, and philosophy. The king deeply respected the elderly master. And Leonardo, in turn, appreciated the king's curiosity and support. Although Leonardo created fewer new works during these years, his influence continued to grow. His notebooks remained filled with ideas. His imagination remained as active as ever. Even in old age, he continued asking questions. He continued observing the world around him. He continued learning. Perhaps that is one of the most inspiring things about Leonardo. He never believed that learning should stop. Not when he was young. Not when he was successful. And not when he was old. For him, curiosity was not a stage of life. It was a way of life. Then, in the spring of 1519, Leonardo's remarkable journey came to an end. He was 67 years old. A respectable age for that time. The curious boy from Vinci had become one of the most admired individuals in Europe. When Leonardo died, he left behind much more than paintings. Much more than inventions. Much more than notebooks. He left behind a way of thinking. A belief that the world is full of mysteries waiting to be explored. And although his life had ended, his influence was only beginning. Because centuries later, people would still study his work. Still admire his imagination. Still learn from his example. And his legacy would grow far beyond anything he could have imagined. What exactly is Leonardo's legacy today? Why do people still talk about him more than 500 years later? That is where our story continues. Leonardo's life had come to an end. But great ideas rarely disappear. And the ideas Leonardo left behind would continue inspiring artists, scientists, inventors, and dreamers for generations to come. More than 500 years have passed since Leonardo da Vinci walked the streets of Florence. Empires have risen and fallen. Kings and queens have come and gone. The world has changed in ways Leonardo could never have imagined. And yet, his name remains famous. Why? Because Leonardo was more than an artist. More than an inventor. More than a scientist. He represented something timeless. Human curiosity. Even today, millions of people visit museums to see his work. The Mona Lisa continues to attract visitors from around the world. Students study his notebooks. Engineers admire his designs. Artists learn from his techniques. Scientists respect his methods of observation. His influence can be found almost everywhere. When modern engineers design machines, they follow the same spirit of curiosity that guided Leonardo. When scientists ask questions about the natural world, they follow a path that Leonardo helped illuminate. When artists strive to capture beauty and emotion, they continue a tradition he helped shape. His ideas crossed the boundaries between subjects. He refused to believe that knowledge should be divided into separate boxes. To Leonardo, art and science belong together. Observation and imagination belong together. Creativity and knowledge belong together. This way of thinking was centuries ahead of its time. Today, many schools and universities encourage students to study different subjects and think creatively. Leonardo was doing exactly that more than 500 years ago. Perhaps that is why people often call him a genius. But if Leonardo could speak to us today, he might disagree. He might not want to be remembered simply as a genius. He might prefer to be remembered as a student. A person who never stopped learning. A person who never stopped asking questions. A person who remained curious until the very end of his life. And maybe that is his greatest legacy. Not a painting. Not a machine. Not a notebook. But a way of looking at the world. A way of seeing wonder in ordinary things. A way of asking questions when others stop asking. A way of remaining curious no matter how much you already know. That legacy continues today. And it will likely continue for many generations to come. Because the world will always need dreamers. The world will always need explorers. And the world will always need people who dare to ask. What if? And so, my friends, we come to the end of Leonardo da Vinci's remarkable journey. But what can we learn from his story? Perhaps we learn that curiosity is one of the greatest gifts a person can have. Leonardo did not become extraordinary because he knew all the answers. He became extraordinary because he never stopped asking questions. He looked at the world with wonder. He observed things carefully. He remained eager to learn throughout his entire life. And that mindset allowed him to achieve things that seemed impossible. Perhaps we can learn something else as well. Many people wait for the perfect opportunity. The perfect moment. The perfect circumstances. Leonardo simply started where he was. A small village. A notebook. A curious mind. And from those simple beginnings, he changed the world. His story reminds us that great journeys often begin with small questions. Small observations. Small steps forward. And perhaps you are on your own journey right now. Maybe you are learning English. Maybe some days feel challenging. Maybe progress seems slower than you hoped. But remember this. Every new word you learn matters. Every story you listen to matters. Every lesson is a step forward. Just as Leonardo filled his notebooks one page at a time, you are building your English one word at a time. And those small efforts add up. So keep asking questions. Keep learning. Keep exploring. And never lose your curiosity. Because curiosity has the power to change lives. It changed Leonardo's life. And it can change yours too. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. I hope you enjoyed discovering the story of Leonardo da Vinci. Now I would love to hear from you. If you could spend 1 hour talking with Leonardo da Vinci, what question would you ask him? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read every comment and would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, my friends. Take care of yourselves. Keep learning. Keep growing. And never stop being curious about the stories that shaped our world. There are many more journeys waiting for you here.